It's been days now, and I haven't slept properly at all. My body seems to have given up on real sleep. Instead, I'm drifting into these strange micro-sleeps, short bursts that last only minutes, and when I wake, I feel like I've lost time. I blink, and suddenly 5 or 6 minutes have passed. It's enough for him, the thing. That looks like my husband, to move closer, inching down the hallway in slow, deliberate motions. Each time I blink, I wonder if I'll wake up to find him right in front of me, standing in the doorway, or worse, standing at the foot of the bed. I don't know what he wants. I don't know if it's me he's after, or if he's simply waiting for the right moment to escape. Maybe he's trying to get to the front door and flee into the night. The idea sends chills down my spine, but I know one thing for sure: he can't leave. I tried to get answers. I called the credit card company, hoping they might shed light on the bizarre charge that appeared just days before this nightmare began. The woman I spoke with on the phone sounded so professional, almost too professional, like she had no idea how far gone I was. She told me that there was no record of any online purchase of the medication my husband had ordered. There had to be a record. I told her there had to be. My voice cracked, and I felt tears start to burn behind my eyes as frustration built up in my chest. I told her it wasn't possible. I told her he had used the card, that he'd charged a large amount for something, but there was nothing. No trace, nothing. We argued in circles for a few minutes before she sighed heavily and said she would hang up if I didn't have any further questions. She sounded annoyed. I had a million questions, but she clearly didn't care, so I hung up in defeat, my hands trembling. What the hell was that pill? Can't even remember the name of it now. The lack of sleep is starting to blur everything, and the darkness is starting to consume me. Another blink, another few minutes lost, and I feel him drawing closer. I jolt awake, my heart pounding in my chest. It's closer now. I can hear the sound of something scraping against the floor. I blink again, and suddenly, it's there, that thing. My husband. No, not him. It looks like him. But it's wrong, so wrong. Its mouth opens wide, unnaturally wide, and it's trying to consume me. My foot is already in its mouth, and I can feel its cold, clammy grip tugging me towards something, towards some dark place I don't want to go. I scream, kicking with all my strength, and finally, somehow, I manage to break free. My foot slips from its grasp, and I feel the skin that's wrapped around it like some disgusting elastic sack. The thing hisses, strange, whistling sound that seems to come from deep within its hollow body. I run, stumbling down the hallway, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I slam the bedroom door shut behind me, my hands shaking. Thank God I still have my phone in my pocket. The police won't help. They already proved that much. They think I'm crazy, that I belong in a loony bin. But at least I can record this. At least I can have something out there, something that might be taken seriously. The thing is still trying to get in, though. I can hear it. Its fingers, no, not fingers, more like tendrils, like wet seaweed, are pushing through the gap at the bottom of the door. I watch in horror as they wiggle, searching for something to grab onto. It's like watching someone try to push a towel under the door, trying to keep out a flood. But this is no towel. This is my husband, or at least it used to be. A towel, fabric. I laugh. It's a hysterical sound, a giggle mixed with sobs, but I can't help myself. The sleep deprivation is getting to me. My husband is nothing more than a pile of skin and flesh, and here I am, laughing like a lunatic at the absurdity of it all. But then suddenly an idea hits me, one so brilliant I almost cry with relief. I used to be a seamstress. I spent years making beautiful dresses, wedding gowns, and even cosplay outfits for Comic Cons. I made repairs for people, altered clothes, and sewed things that made people happy. My husband always bought me the best sewing supplies, and I had everything I could ever need. When we moved into this house, I made sure to pack everything carefully, and it was still here, waiting for me in the sewing room right where I left it. Ripping the bedroom door open, I leap over the pile of skin that used to be my husband. I feel the squishy, gelatinous texture between my toes as I race down the stairs, not caring about the disgusting sensation. I can't stop now. I need to act fast. The sewing room is at the bottom of the stairs, and there it is, my salvation. It's all still there, just as I left it. I rush to the sewing machine, my hands trembling, my heart racing in my chest. I can't wait to see if the thing will make it down here before I'm finished. It's moving slowly, but I can hear it coming, its footsteps almost wet against the wood floor. But I know I have time. It takes longer than I expected. The thing is sluggish, dragging its body down the stairs, its skin dragging behind it, and I almost feel pity for it, but that's stupid. It's not my husband. It's a monster, a twisted mimic of the man I loved. I finally hear it at the doorframe, struggling to hold itself up. Its legs are bent unnaturally, as though the skin can barely hold the weight of its body. I can't help but feel a strange sense of triumph. I'm winning. I reach for its face, cupping the rough, stretched skin in my hands. I can feel the holes in its face, those gaping, hollow eyes, and I whisper, "Shh, my love. I have an idea." It doesn't respond. It can't, but I know it's listening. It takes all night, but I manage to get the thing onto the mannequin. I staple and sew the skin into place, making sure it's secure. I use skirt wire and scotch tape to bend its fingers into position, and I glue the smile back into place, adding wrinkles where they should be. I even make tiny adjustments to its eyes, using plastic safety eyes from an old teddy bear. They're not perfect, but they'll do. Finally, I put the mannequin in bed with me, wrapping its rubbery arms around myself. The thing's strange whistling noise almost sounds like it's snoring. And that's it, my husband is back. Perfect. Just as I always wanted. I work in a high-pressure job, and it makes me despise the homeless people who beg outside my building. I make a lot of money in my job, but it's not because I don't work hard for it. I work my ass off every single day. It's a high-risk, high-reward career in investment banking, and the pressure to succeed never stops. I'm at the top of my game, constantly dealing with millions of dollars, but it's not just about the money. As a financial advisor, I make decisions that can change the future of entire companies. And if I give bad advice, I take full responsibility. Every deal I make is a risk, and every day I have to be perfect. From the outside, people see me as confident and composed, always with a smile on my face exuding success. But inside, it's a different story. I'm a mess, constantly on edge, always trying to impress clients, and never feeling like I can stop. The stress is relentless. My job demands so much, and when I'm not in meetings or on calls, I'm staring at spreadsheets, calculating risk and opportunity. It's exhausting. I feel like a machine, and I'm running on fumes. I'm constantly on the verge of burnout. My stomach is tied in knots every day, my brain fogged by the sheer amount of work I have to get through. I'm so used to being under pressure that I don't even remember what it feels like to relax anymore. I'm just a high-functioning, overworked robot trying not to fall apart. When I leave the office, the last thing I have energy for is empathy. I'm drained, and yet every single day, when I step out of the building, I see the same group of homeless people, begging outside, looking for a handout. I'm not heartless. I know these people are vulnerable, and I don't see them as any less human than I am. But by the time I've spent my day battling high-stakes deals and impossible expectations, my compassion has been depleted. It feels like there's nothing left for them. Most of the time, I just ignore them and keep walking. They're not my problem. I don't carry cash, and even if I did, I'd rather not be harassed. But there's one guy who's different. He seems to hate me. Every time I walk past him, he insults me. I don't know what happened in his life, but he's got a sharp tongue. I sometimes wonder if he was funny once, maybe a comedian, if he had the right breaks. His insults are creative, but also cutting. Our encounters have become awkward. I tried to avoid him, but every time I walk past, it's the same. Last week, as I walked to work, he shouted out, "You have all the charm of a spreadsheet and the empathy of a market crash." I've heard my fair share of insults, and yes, I'm ruthless in business, but I'm not heartless. His comment stung more than it should have. I spent the entire day thinking about it. Was I really just a spreadsheet in his eyes? Someone who only cared about numbers and profit? I didn't get a chance to respond, but by the time I left the office, I was hoping he wouldn't be there. Of course he was. As I hurried into a taxi, trying to forget the hellish day, he called out, "I'd say you're morally bankrupt, but I'm sure you'd find a way to profit from it." I was so tempted to yell back, but I kept my head down and ignored him. He was just a guy on the street, and I wasn't going to let him ruin my mood. But it wasn't that simple. The comments weighed on me. The next morning, I braced myself. Sure enough, there he was sitting on the curb, waiting for me. He flashed a smile, as if he'd been waiting just to taunt me. I wanted to snap at him, but his smirk only made me angrier. "You're the perfect example of how a suit can make someone look successful, while still being completely devoid of substance," he said, his eyes gleaming. It felt like a punch in the gut. I wasn't some shallow, empty shell. I was a person. But the way he spoke to me, it made me question myself. What was he seeing in me? Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been so focused on work that I forgot what it meant to have substance. "What is it you want?" I snapped. "Why are you picking on me?" The look on his face shifted, and the cheeky grin disappeared. His voice became quieter, almost sad. "I'm hungry. All I want is something to eat." For a moment, I was stunned. It wasn't what I was expecting. This guy who had been throwing insults at me every day just wanted a sandwich? I didn't want him to be right. I didn't want him to expose some kind of moral failure in me, but I knew I had to do something. "Okay," I said, hesitating for a second. "I can get you something to eat. But if I do, you have to leave me alone." I walked across the street to the cafe, bought a sandwich, a coffee, and a little cash for him. When I handed it to him, I watched him devour the sandwich in a matter of seconds. I hadn't realized how different our lives were until that moment. I didn't hunger for food anymore, but for recognition, for success. This guy was just hungry for a meal. I lived alone in a one-bedroom penthouse. I didn't have fuck you money, but I lived comfortably. My nights were spent working, looking over reports, chasing deals, closing clients. I was married to my job. I had no time for a real relationship. That night, I'd just gotten off a call when I heard a loud knock on my door. I froze, wondering who it could be at this hour. When I looked through the people, I was stunned. It was him, the homeless man. His eyes were wide with urgency, and he pounded on my door as though he had no other choice. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice frantic. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked. This wasn't normal. Why was he at my apartment? "I need a place to crash for the night," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. "It's freezing out here. I've tried the shelters, but they're full." I was caught off guard. This wasn't what I expected. I didn't want to let him in, but I couldn't send him out into the cold either. "Fine," I said reluctantly. "You can come in for a bit, but you have to leave when I tell you to." He stepped inside, his dirty, matted hair falling over his face as he plopped down on my expensive leather couch. It felt surreal to have him in my space, sitting in the middle of my polished, perfect life. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw something beyond the insults and the bitterness. Maybe we weren't all that different, after all. He picked up my bottle of whiskey with his rough, calloused hands, the kind that bore the marks of long nights spent on the streets. "Springback, rare, 50 years old," he said, holding the bottle to his nose and taking a deep sniff. "This is an expensive whiskey." I blinked, taken aback. "Wow, you really know your whiskeys." Without asking, he poured himself a glass, his movements familiar, as though he'd done this 1,000 times. "You don't remember me, do you?" he asked, taking a sip from the glass. I paused, confusion rising. If he was someone from my past, it was hard to recognize him, not with the dirt caked on his face and the tattered clothes he wore. He looked so different from the man who used to stand outside my office. "Should I remember you?" I asked, still unsure. "I used to work in your building," he said. "We walked past each other many times. I was an accountant for the bank you work for." The name didn't ring a bell. I couldn't recall ever seeing him in the office, but he seemed to know everything about me, the people I worked with, the clients I dealt with, even the rumors that had circulated over the years. It was eerie. We sat, talking and drinking long into the night. For a moment, I forgot he was the strange, homeless guy who begged outside my building. We laughed and reminisced about the good old days, or at least the version of them that he painted. It felt strange to sit with him, as though we were equals, as though nothing had changed. But the next morning, the weight of the night settled on me. I woke up with a pounding headache, my mouth dry and my body heavy. I hadn't even had the energy to kick him out. It was bizarre, but somehow, I let him stay. When I got up, I was surprised to find he had made himself at home. He was showered and shaved, strutting around my kitchen in my robe as if he lived here. It was unsettling how at ease he seemed, like he had done this before. "I'm late for work," I mumbled, grabbing my bag. "No offense, but you need to be gone by the time I get back." He smiled at me, unbothered, as he buttered a slice of toast. "We had a good talk last night," he said, "but you still haven't asked me my name." My head still felt like it was spinning from the whiskey, and I struggled to focus. "Yeah, sorry. What was it again?" "My name's Adam Bleacher," he said with a grin. "Right," I said, rubbing my temples. "It was good talking to you, Adam. I really hope you get back on your feet." I turned toward the door. "But I seriously have to go." I spent the day at work in a fog, wandering around like I didn't even belong there. It was as if I'd forgotten how to do my job. I fumbled through meetings and conversations, my mind scattered. As I sat at my desk, I noticed a picture on the wall. It was a photo of me and a few colleagues, smiling, celebrating after landing an important client. But as I looked closer, I froze. Standing next to me, with his arm around me, was Adam, the homeless man who had been sitting in my apartment last night. I blinked, staring at the photo, as disbelief settled in. How could he have been in that photo? I never remembered seeing him in the office, and yet there he was, in the same place at the same time as me. When I got home that evening, feeling completely drained from the long day, something felt off. The air in my apartment was thick with tension. As I stepped inside, I heard faint voices coming from the living room. To my shock, there were 3 more homeless people in my apartment. They lounged on my couch, like they belonged there, ragged and worn, as if they had been living with me for years. Adam looked up from his spot, sipping from my whiskey again. "Meet my friends," he said, gesturing to the others. "They worked in your building too once." Cold shiver ran through me. I wanted to scream, to throw them all out, but something about the way Adam looked at me stopped me. His eyes were dark, and there was something sinister in his gaze that rooted me to the spot. "Come sit with us," he said. "This is where you belong." I couldn't explain it, but I felt like they belonged there, like they had always been a part of this place. I didn't throw them out. I should have, but my limbs felt heavy, my mind sluggish. My thoughts spun wildly as I tried to reason with myself. I had work to do, clients to impress, deadlines to meet. But every time I tried to shake the feeling, a strange lethargy overtook me. I wasn't in control. The night dragged on, and they stayed again, filling my apartment with their strange presence. They told stories I couldn't remember, but somehow they felt familiar, like I was part of them. Days passed and my life began to unravel. At work, I was slipping. Deals I once would have closed effortlessly now felt impossible. I couldn't concentrate, and my sharp mind was dulling. When I left the office at night, I no longer went home. Instead, I lingered outside the building, watching the homeless crowd more closely than I ever had before. It was like I was drawn to them, like they were calling me in. Over time, they began to change. The people in my apartment became cleaner, more put together. It was as though they belonged there and I didn't. Their presence was becoming less ragged, while I felt myself slipping. One night, after another round of whiskey, an empty conversation, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me. "Why me? Why are you here?" Adam looked at me with that dark glint in his eyes and smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You don't get it, do you? You were always one of us. We all were. You spend your life chasing things that aren't real, money, power, prestige. But the building, the system, it takes everything from you, little by little, until you're just like us." I laughed it off, but the unease in my gut began to creep in. "I'm not like you," I said, trying to convince myself. Adam let out a disbelieving chuckle. "Go look in the mirror." When I went to the bathroom, I didn't recognize the man who stared back at me. My face was pale, gaunt, my eyes hollow. My beard had grown wild, and I looked just like Adam had when he first showed up at my apartment, scruffy, disheveled, worn out. Time slipped away from me after that. One morning, I woke up on the cold floor of my apartment, wrapped in a thin blanket, empty bottles of whiskey scattered around me. When I tried to go back to work, I found that no one recognized me. My access badge didn't work. I wandered outside, lost and disoriented, sitting on the cold concrete floor of the building. People I once knew walked past me, as if I were invisible, and the few who noticed me looked at me with pity. As darkness fell and the cold seeped into my bones, I decided to head home. When I tried to open my door, my key didn't fit. I could hear faint laughter coming from inside. Confused, I banged on the door. Adam opened it, looking at me as though I were a stranger. "Can I help you?" he asked, disgust in his voice. I could see the dining room beyond him, where he and his friends were gathered. He wore a suit, my old suit, the one I used to wear when I went out for expensive dinners. "I'm cold and hungry," I said, desperation seeping into my voice. "Can I come in?" "You can't just barge in here," he said coldly. "There are shelters nearby." "Adam," I pleaded, "it's me. I thought you said I was one of you." His smile grew wider, darker. "The funny thing about falling, the higher you were, the less anyone remembers where you landed. And with that, the door slammed shut, leaving me outside a man who had lost everything except for the strange, inevitable pull of the streets. My attempt at recreating Back to the Future from memory starts with a strange sense of confusion. I wake up late for school, which is the first sign that things are already off. I have no idea how I slept through 200 clocks in my bedroom, but I did. Seriously, why do I have so many clocks? I can't remember anything from the night before, and the strangest part, I'm still dressed. It's like I just crashed at some point, and the next thing I know, Huey Lewis and the news are blaring on the radio, which to be fair is a pretty solid wake-up call. The Power of Love? That song is tight, but man, it's not enough to explain why I feel so disoriented. I stumble downstairs, hoping for some clarity, and find my lazy-ass sister and brother already sitting at the breakfast table. At least I think they were there. Maybe it was just my mom. Honestly, it's hard to tell. One of them, probably my brother, mentions that the pickup truck is damaged. At first, I can't quite process what they mean, but then it hits me. That fat-ass Biff had smashed it up, and now he's outside trying to explain how it's somehow my dad's fault. As usual, my dad just stands there and takes it. I don't know why he lets Biff walk all over him. I can't help but feel a surge of anger for him, but I can't do much about it. That beat-up pickup truck? Well, it was supposed to be the key to Jennifer's fine white ass this weekend. I'd planned to take her out on a camping trip, but that was probably never going to happen now. I don't have time to dwell on it though, so I head out to school. Wait, no, I think I stopped by Doc's house first. Did I? Yeah, I must have. Why else would I be heading there before school? Nah, maybe I went after. It's all a bit fuzzy right now. Anyway, I'm feeling pretty good on my skateboard, like I'm some kind of badass. I can hold on to the back of cars and buses while I ride to school. Not that it's a big deal or anything, just a regular Tuesday for me, I guess. When I finally get to school, I have to break the bad news to Jennifer. She's really nice about it. She's understanding about the truck, even though I can tell she's a bit disappointed. I wish I could say the same about this asshole teacher who grabs me by the hair or the ear, I'm not sure which, calling me McFly, just so he can take another shot at my dad, like he always does when he was at this school. It's so humiliating. I mean, come on, that's my dad you're talking about. It's uncalled for, but I guess that's just how people like Biff operate. In the afternoon, I go for some auditions or something. Don't ask me what for, because I can't even remember. Guess who's sitting on the judging panel? None other than Huey Lewis himself. Yeah, the guy from Huey Lewis and the News. No kidding, he's playing it cool, like nobody knows who he is. But of course I recognize him. I mean, come on, who doesn't? I just roll with it. I play my heart out, but it's like he's messing with me. I'm good, really good, but he shoots me down. It's too loud, he says, or something like that. What a jerk. Just when I think the day's over, I remember that Doc called me this morning and asked me to come over after school. I almost forgot. But yeah, I'm heading to his place because he said he had something big to show me. It feels a little weird though. An old dude asking a teenager to hang out in his garage? I'm not even sure how this whole relationship started, but hey, I'm going with it. When I get there, Doc shows me this insane time-traveling contraption. He's all excited, going on about how it can travel through time. I can't believe it, but I'm rolling with it. Doc starts explaining that this thing can hit 88 miles per hour, and then boom, time travel. So naturally, he needs me to tape it. Sure, why not? What else am I doing? I'm just a regular teenager trying to figure out life, and now I'm going to help a mad scientist demonstrate time travel. Classic. Fast forward to the night, and we're meeting up at the mall. Doc needs plutonium to run the car, and wait, did I just hear him right? Yeah, he got it from some terrorist group. Of course he would. He's Doc Brown, right? Of course he's involved with terrorists, why not? Anyway, I'm filming him as he explains everything. What could possibly go wrong? Well, apparently a lot can go wrong. Out of nowhere, a pickup truck shows up. It's not just any truck though. It's armed with a machine gun, and there's a terrorist manning it. They're shooting at Doc. They nearly shoot me too, but the gun jams. In a panic, I jump into the DeLorean and floor it. I scream across the parking lot, not knowing what to expect, but then, bam, I'm somewhere else. I have no clue where I am, but the mall is gone, replaced by some dusty old road with a billboard. In the way? Oh, and I'm still in this ridiculous radioactive suit. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. I had to wear it, but now the DeLorean is completely dead. I push it behind the billboard for now and start wandering. I have no idea what's going on. This is the craziest trip I've ever been on. I wander around for what feels like forever until I find an old farmhouse. I knock on the door, but before I know it, this crazy old guy sees me. I'm still wearing the radioactive suit, and he freaks out. He grabs a shotgun and starts shooting at me. I panic, run back to the car, and hit the gas. I blast through the barn doors like they're made of cardboard and fly past the guy. Another shot misses, then another one, and the third one, yep, that one misses too. But at this point, the car is dead for good. Daylight breaks, and I decide to take off my ridiculous suit and just walk toward where I think the town is. After a while, I finally find it, except it's not the town I know. It's like the 1950s, all dressed up to look like the past. Everyone's playing along, like they're stuck in some weird time warp. I bump into a guy, but I can't remember if it's the black mayor candidate or my dad when he was younger. But either way, my younger dad is getting bullied by a younger Biff. So of course I trip Biff and piss him off. He gets mad and starts chasing me around the town center in a 50s car, and I'm on a makeshift skateboard. Don't ask how, it's a long story. Anyway, Biff crashes into a manure truck, and he and his buddies end up covered in cow shit. Now I'm really starting to freak out. How much of this do I actually remember? I'm disturbed by how much I know about this movie. I could go on and tell you the whole plot, but I think I'm going to stop